listening to the musicmarketing.com podcast. How to sell more music, get more people to your shows, and make more money in the music business. Here's your host, music marketer, and author of the book Six Figure Musician, David Hooper. Joining David is his co-host, Wendy Wallace.
This is David Hooper, and this is the musicmarketing.com podcast. Wendy is off today, but I brought somebody else in from Nashville, Tennessee. This is Charles Alexander. He's got a company called Outside the Box Music. He's a digital strategist. Charles, welcome.
Hey, thanks, David. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Digital strategist, what is that?
Yeah, so we basically put together plans and campaigns for artists or whomever works with us to kind of raise their online profile. And the way we like to describe it is that we act like an amp for your digital presence, you know. So we'll amplify what you do and get visibility and impressions and hopefully at a higher rate than what you've been getting prior to working with us. So
it's like a guitar amp. It could cut both ways. If you can play guitar well,
that's right.
People are going to hear you, and if you're not so good, well, people are going to hear that too, right?
That's correct. And hopefully we've been doing this long enough now that we can kind of tell you, you know, it might be, you just might not be ready for this just yet. You might not need to go practice a little bit more. Or we might say, yeah, this is something the world needs to hear. So.
Well, that's what I want to dive into with you today. You know, we saw each other. We see each other all the time. You're a guy that's really about everywhere. Anywhere I am, or maybe you're following me, but anywhere I am.
It's stalking, actually, David. That's exactly what it is.
I saw you at a party was it last week? A couple weeks ago. It was a book launch party. A guy in town named Dave Delaney. People may know him. He wrote a book called New Business Networking. He's a social media guy.
Yeah.
And saw you there, and we started talking. You've got some really great clients now. I was asking about them. And I'd like to use this opportunity on the podcast here to talk about what it is that makes bands successful, what gets them to the level where you, outside the box music and your amplifier, so to say, can actually do them a service rather than letting everybody know that they're not that good.
Right. You know, I think that the common element in groups or acts or bands or whatever that I think are successful is that there's a singular focus and understanding about what it is that they do and who they're trying to reach. And they already know what it is that they bring to the table. That's their greatest point of leverage. So what do I mean by that? So one of the artists I work with, is Keb Mo. Now, Keb is great. He's a great songwriter, a great player, and all that. But one of the things that's amazing about him is his live performance. And another act we work with, a band from Fort Collins, Colorado, Four Sisters, they're called Shell. And again, the thing that they bring to the table that nobody else brings, and there's one other element I'll talk about in a second. But again, the common element in both these cases is that they're amazing, amazing live performers. And I think if you know what it is that you do and where your strengths lie, and you can then sort of hone that and craft that and focus on that particular thing and amplify that, then, you know, whether it's the digital stuff, the traditional publicity, we can then take that and sort of present it to the world in a form that most people can consume or can interact with or can share, you know. So I think the common element, again, is what do you do well and how do you take that and just take it to the next level?
You know, I love that. I think that, you know, live is a pretty big one, but even beyond that, you could break that down and say, like, what's good about your live shows? What's good about your songwriting? I think about Styx whenever I hear somebody's talking about, like, what is good about them. Well, let's say their harmonies are really good. Well, put more harmonies in. It's kind of like the equivalent of a push-up bra, maybe. It accentuates
there you go.
What you've got, and what you want to do is, like a girdle or one of those things, like sucks all the fat out of you or something. If you've got some other things that you're not so good at, you want to take those away, right? And kind of
Right.
not accentuate that with the amplifier. So you really, but taking the concept, like if your live show is great, get out and play live more. If you're good at harmonies, put more harmonies in. If you're really good at hooks, for example, but maybe not necessarily lyrics. You can outsource the lyrics from the verses, and you just come up with a hook, or you co-write. We see that a lot in Nashville. We've got guys that all they do is just come up with great titles, and that's their contribution to a song.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this, but on Showtime right now, there's this thing on the history of the Eagles. You know that band? Yeah. And I've just been obsessed with this show right now because I'm learning so much. Now there's a band or an act or a bunch of guys who understood what it was that they did and then amplified that, right? So at the very beginning, they didn't really know how to write songs even, but then they were hanging out with Jackson Browne, and they learned that, okay, so in what we do, the singing, the live show, and the songwriting needs to come together. So we're going to study at the feet of Jackson Browne and work with him and hone our songwriting. And I learned something really important. Glenn Fry saying, oh, so that's how you write songs. You just show up with elbow grease,
Mm-hmm.
It's time, it's thought, it's perseverance, and just learning that if you're going to do this, you might not be able to do this right now, but if you go woodshed and learn how to write songs and study at the feet of somebody who's really great at this, then you can do it. And the other thing that was really, I thought, impactful in that show was that they were talking about performing for a bunch of people, and how some of the songs that they were performing, they were doing like for the 1,000th time, and they were really tired of doing it. But they understood that when they did a live show, that's what people came for, and so they were going to go up and do it well and hit it out of the park, because that is what made their business work. So
yeah, a couple things that you said right there that I think I want to go back and point out. We have the saying in Nashville, and you've heard this, is that good songs are written, great songs rewritten.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's great, and it goes back to what you're talking about with the live show, playing it for the 1,000th time, or just in general, the song in general. Once the song comes out, I think really good entertainers make it look easy. Certainly when I was writing my last book, Six Figure Musician, it was a painful process, and I had to think about that every day. It's like Stephen King or any of the great writers of our time, I'm just going to use him because he's very prolific and has been for a number of years. Yeah. You would think that the guy just sits down at a typewriter and knocks one out every couple weeks. What you don't see, though, is the pain, is the red ink by the editor. And you have that same thing with an Eagles show with whoever their management was, or just feedback from the fans. And certainly you see it as a digital strategist. You see the ins and outs. I mean, you're probably, I would imagine, in some ways, when you go into working with a band, you're like an attorney working with somebody who's on trial. You say, all right, give me all the bad stuff, because they're going to find it out anyway, and let's see how we can work around this and accentuate the good.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's exactly it. Like the Kev Moes of the world and the Shells of the world, as great as they are, they're not sitting around going, oh, we got this down. No, they're sitting around going, Kev's like sitting in the corner while he's talking to you, and he's like just noodling on the guitar.
Yeah.
Doing the muscle memory thing. The same with those sisters. When they come to town, before they go play a show, they're not going, oh, we got this.
Yeah, we don't need to warm up.
We don't need to warm up. We don't need to rehearse. The same set. You rehearse the same set over and over again until it's like second nature, So, yeah. So, I think sometimes people kind of get tricked by the fact that digital is so easy, right? Because it's everywhere. You can just get on the internet. And so there's this idea maybe, or misconception, that all you need to do is just get on Facebook or get on Twitter and just tweet or do a status update or make it go viral, whatever that means. But people forget that it's really hard work. The work has to be there, or you need to have invested in the work in order for people to be able to pay attention to what you're doing. So, yeah.
Something else you said that is a big concept that I see is an issue for bands is the upcoming acts. They think that a guy gets to Keb's level, for example, or a guy gets to the level of the Eagles and it's like, I'm done. I have success. And we can just kick back. The royalties are going to come in and we can go out and do tours and we don't need to promote them. That never, ever, ever happens. I know someone who's working very closely with the Rolling Stones on their current tour, and the Rolling Stones, the reason they've had such a career is because they're out there constantly working, they're constantly practicing, constantly writing, constantly performing. And this is one of the biggest acts in the world. They don't just walk out in front of 80,000 people and have that many people show up. There's a huge, I guess, what would you call it, smoke and mirrors and strings behind them. And that's kind of like what you're talking about with the digital media. We see the finished show. We see the tweet. But sometimes 140 characters, it's like writing a good song. Sometimes the least amount of space that you have to work with requires the most amount of work because you have to be very, very, let's say, crafty with your words. You've got to wordsmith things a little bit and really put a lot of emphasis into what people are seeing because you've got to get good at it. There's not a lot of time and there's not a lot of space.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. I used to think that you sort of could put this digital strategy stuff into two big bins. That if you're a new band, the thing that you're worried about the most is discovery, as opposed to conversion. And we can talk about what that means in a second. And then that if you're an established band or an established act, you're really worried about expanding your base and more conversions, right? But then I remember reading somewhere about the Rolling Stones and someone saying, even the Rolling Stones are worried about discovery. And I'm kind of going, that's the Rolling Stones. Who doesn't know about the Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah.
But they're all about just expanding the base and growing their business. Because I think, doesn't Mick Jagger have an MBA or something?
Well, Mick Jagger is very, very sharp. And let me give you a very timely example regarding Mick Jagger. I did an interview with Dave Stewart of Eurythmics probably about a year ago. He came through, and he's in a band with Mick Jagger. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
Okay, there you go. Well, nobody else has heard of him either. And the numbers came out on their album. It was finally released. And I think it was something like, if it was 50,000, I'd be surprised. It seems like it was about 27,000.
Yeah.
So there you go. This is two of the biggest rock stars in the world, and I can't remember who else is in that band, but it's basically a super group. It's like, it's like Robert Plant, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and I realize don't send me emails telling me these guys are dead, but it's those kind of people in this band, Mick Jagger, Dave Stewart, and people haven't heard of them. I mean, these bands are facing that. So I'd love to dive into that just a little bit more. You talked about discovery and conversion, and those are, it sounds like the two biggest elements that you have to go up against when you're doing this digital strategy. Right.
So, I mean, from the perspective, I think, of a new band, and I'll talk about what I would consider a new band that's really doing a really good job of helping in the discovery process. But I think when you're a new band, I think some of the minefields that people kind of slip up on is that, okay, I'm going to go, I'm a new act, I'm going to go into the studio, I'm going to spend $20,000 on a record. And I'm just throwing out $20,000 because I have a concrete example of that. But, and then there's no thought given to, okay, great, you're a new act, what's your fan base? No one's thought about that. How am I going to justify the expense, right? So right off the bat, the first thing that you're anxious about is conversions. You're like, okay, how am I going to sell enough records to make this project worth the investment, right? So that no one's thought about, or at least in this particular case, no one's thought about, well, how are people going to find out about what I do first? And so one of the first things we advise bands, and hopefully we've caught them early enough in the process, is that, okay, you don't have a mailing list? Okay. You have 50 people on Facebook? Okay. You have no Twitter? You don't have any kind of base? Maybe the first thing you should think about is, how do you go into a studio and record maybe one or two songs? And even that, how do you record those one or two songs in your friend's studio and just do really kind of a sparse acoustic version? Unless, of course, if you're this trash rock band or something. But, how do you first think about letting people know that, first of all, you are a musician and that you are creating music and that you want people to pay attention. So one of the first things we try to tell people is get on YouTube, right? Because people think about YouTube as an entertainment channel or an entertainment avenue, but really YouTube is the biggest search engine for music. So the first thing you should do before you go and invest $20,000 or whatever in a project is you need to insert yourself into the search engine and work on getting out really cool or really interesting music videos with you singing, and maybe even with you singing not your own songs but cover songs, so that there's all those reflected search hits from people looking for well-known songs.
The leverage that's already there, and take advantage of it.
Yeah. So discovery and then impressions. I think, just because people know what you do, once people know what you do, your endpoint, there isn't an endpoint. What you're trying to do is to get the next impression. You're not trying to make the 99-cent download sale. You're trying to get people to convert at a higher point. I think I saw some study that says most people want to spend somewhere in the $20 to $25 region per transaction as opposed to 99 cents. But if you make people spend 99 cents, then they will spend 99 cents, right? So how can you make your business do transactions that are at a higher cost point? But that isn't going to happen unless people know who you are, and unless people think, oh, they're not crazy for following you or for buying your music. And the way that happens is if there's more impressions, right? So whatever you do, the thing you're trying to think about is, oh, not how many units I can sell right now, but how many people are going to listen to my music. And the way people listen to music, at least when you're new, is that you have to remove the barrier, right? So don't make your albums too expensive, or maybe even give away your first album, just so that people can discover what it is that you're about. And then, you can think about conversions down the road.
Well, I think that just getting them to actually watch a video or listen to music, even for free, could be considered a conversion in a way.
Yeah.
Because when you think about the real commodity, the most valuable one, which is our time, and you think about all the noise that is out there, and I know there were some people probably rolling their eyes when, oh, brother, YouTube, that's easy, that's like kiddie stuff. Let me tell you a story that Charles and I can't give the name away, and I can't even give the festival away because it hasn't yet been announced, but I found this out yesterday. These guys played at Bonnaroo, a couple YouTube people, right?
Yeah.
They're at the Bonnaroo stage. This thing is going really, really well. A lot of crowd. And I don't know how long they've been around, but they were discovered on YouTube. And they just got booked for a big festival. There'll be about 10, 15,000 people there. And I was like, from YouTube? I didn't know about them. I mean, I'm not that hip. These guys were telling me about it.
Right.
Yes, from YouTube. And it was doing exactly what it is that you're saying. I love what you said, too, about I guess we'll call them views, impressions, that's also social proof. If I go to see a video on YouTube and it has, let's say, 100,000 views, which is in a lot of cases a lot more than actually 100,000, because YouTube is not like a hit counter.
Right.
If I see that other people have been there, I say, other people found it interesting, so I'm a lot more likely to hang out a little while longer and maybe like it as well. That social proof is extremely important. We see it every time when we see a nice restaurant with a line out the door, as opposed to that restaurant that I'm driving by every day and there's nobody there. I don't even give it a second look.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think musicians and artists, and I think in any kind of business, sometimes we kind of trick ourselves, right? So if you were to so we'll call it a different business or a different arena. So let's just say you're a musician, and like you so greatly demonstrated, let's just say you like coffee. Well, where do you go get coffee? You go get coffee at a place A that you might be comfortable at, but B, probably some place where someone told you, man, coffee at this place is amazing, and the vibe and all that stuff is really, really cool. So go get coffee there. And so you might drive from one side of town to the other side of town because, like, I love that phrase, social proof. I just wrote that down.
Well, not only social proof, when it comes to coffee, you might go to a coffee shop because your friends are there.
Yep.
And you're going to see your friends there. And that is really why people get together, is because they want to connect with people. They want to have a good time. It's more about the feeling. And I think that it would be the same way.
Right?
Yeah. Why do I have a copy of Microsoft Word on my computer? Well, is it that I like Microsoft Word? No, it's because everybody else uses it, and I kind of have to have Microsoft Word.
Yep.
So the same thing with your band, except for, hey, I've got, Charles, you're going to go see the show. I really want to hang out with you, so therefore I'll be there at the show.
Right. And so we think about that when it comes to things like coffee and movies and restaurants. But then when it comes to the music that we ourselves make, we kind of go, oh, people are just going to buy this. So, and it's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen when there's social proof, when there's experiences that people want to share, and that your music brings an experience to a group of people who might go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So whatever you can do to sort of leverage that or to sort of amplify that is what you need to be doing. And maybe the thing you need to be doing at the very beginning of your career is not worrying about how many units you're going to sell because you've spent 20 grand on a record. Maybe the first thing you need to figure out is how do you put out 2 songs and see how you can get impressions on those 2 songs, and then measure and justify your expense going to a recording studio or whatever it is you're going to be doing.
Do you have any specific ways that somebody could, if they've decided to go this route, to put up a YouTube video, what they can do to make it worth their time?
Yeah, I don't think you need to go out and spend a whole bunch of money. I think, again, this comes down to what is it that you do really, really well. I think we're now at the point, in the evolution of technology that the quality of videos you can make are so great just with inexpensive equipment. You can pick up like a Canon T3i for under $500, and the video looks like film, right? So if you can either A, buy or rent from these rental houses, like some of these inexpensive cameras, but more importantly, if you have a cool concept, like, I love like some of these really simple videos. If you guys have watched things like, what's that duo? I'm kind of blanking on their name right now.
Hall & Oates?
Pamplemousse.
I'm just kidding.
Hall & Oates, yeah. Like Pamplemousse, I love those music videos because he calls them video songs. And it's just that when you hear a sound on the track, you see what that visual action is.
Yeah.
And then the Hall & Oates thing, the cover by Nicky Bloom, the Gramblers.
In the car.
Then the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much more simple could that be?
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a cool concept, I'm just throwing out stuff out there, but, like what if you were fully clothed in a bathtub and you're doing the bathtub sessions, in your little bathtub, and I love the acoustics in a bathroom, so what if you could sit in a bathtub in your tiny little cast iron bathtub and do cover songs of, songs you love, and it's like a particular thing. So I think folks just need to start thinking about what is it that you do really well, and then kind of figure out how to present that in a video. And I think that can get you a lot of traction.
I think the cover song, the Hall & Oates cover by Nicky, and which one was it? It was...
I Can Go For That?
I can't go for that.
Yeah.
No can do.
No can do. That's right.
I think that one, beyond just having a cover song that they leverage and kind of a cool way to do it, because basically what it is, if you haven't seen it, it's a band, the singer is driving, and there's some guy with like a Martin backpacker and a little bitty Casio keyboard and maybe a shaker. But it sort of tells the story of this band. It's like they've probably just played a gig, and you're telling this in your head, making it up. They probably just played a gig, they're on the road, going to the next gig, and it shows that passion that they have for the music. And when you can somehow put that on tape. If it's video, if it's audio, I think everybody should put their passion on tape. That's why we like to have kind of like a live feel. We love it when a band can get together all in the same room in the studio and really have that live feeling on the tape. We connect to it. I mean, it's the passion that does that. So I guess that would be my recommendation. I'm glad you brought that up because I'd seen that video. It's got passed around. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen John Oates talking about the video.
Yeah.
So I mean, how cool would that be to have the guy that you covered talking about the cover that you did?
That's exactly right. And again, I think you can sort of trip yourself up thinking, oh, I need this to have like 1 million views or whatever, and it's all going to be relative to where you are in your career. I mean, if I can do a shout out for somebody that took a workshop from us, and he's an older gentleman, and he had come to our workshop and we had talked about doing YouTube videos, and everybody kind of groaned because they were like, oh, I don't want to be on YouTube. And this guy was like, oh, okay. And so the example that we used in the workshop was this young singer-songwriter from upstate New York named Julia Nunes. And Julia started her career out with like cover songs. And so this guy, Jim, who was in our class, Jim Callahan, he went home and he just did this really silly video of him in front of his video cam going, okay, so I took this workshop and this guy said, I need to be on YouTube and I need to like do stuff like Julia Nunes. And so, if you want to call in and ask me questions while I'm here on YouTube, you should go ahead and do that now. It was hilarious, right? Because no one can call you on YouTube. But and he was talking about how his son called him up and said, Dad, are you okay? But that thing from, and this is a guy who wasn't really on YouTube. I think that thing has now like 1,500 views or something. Yeah. People just think it's a riot. But
and that doesn't seem, I like what you said, 1,500 doesn't seem like a lot when you look at these, what they call YouTubers. They're guys that can get half a million views. But 1,500, if you had 1,500 people at the club tonight, you'd probably be pretty damn thrilled about it.
Yeah.
Most acts would.
Yeah.
If you're the Rolling Stones, not so much. But most bands, a club, what does that hold? Maybe 300, 400, 500 people?
Yeah, depending on the club.
So 1,500 people, that's pretty good for 15, 20 minutes work.
Yeah, and you got to start somewhere, I mean, you got to start. And, if you keep thinking, oh, that's the other thing I think people trip themselves up about is that, oh, I need 10,000 likes on Facebook. Well, why do you need 10,000 likes on Facebook? Let's start with, 100.
Right.
And, and what you do with those 100 likes is the real question.
Yeah.
Because you could have 10,000, but if you don't know what to do with them.
Well, what is it that you do? Is that something that you help when you're working outside the box? Because a like is not always a like.
Yes. So I think one of the things we do really well is kind of teach artists, depending on the situation, teach artists how to engage fans in a meaningful way, like how to make it. So this band Shell that we work with, I mean, they're amazing on their own, and really, with or without us, they do a really great job. But what we've done is say, well, talk about stuff that, that's relatable to your life. Don't just talk about your music all the time, right? So talk about how you're back on the farm, and, on their days off the road, they go raise chickens and they go do whatever it is that they do on a farm, and then once they've had some downtime, they start working on concepts. They record, direct, and edit their own music videos. So pretty soon after they come off the road, they're kind of going, what should the next music video look like? And then they go out and shoot it, And then as they're developing this concept, they start throwing out stuff. And they start talking about, oh, we're thinking about doing this. This is going to be like a circus theme, and this is why we think we want to do this. And then people just kind of flip out over that. And so even when you're off the road, you're still maintaining momentum. Mm-hmm. And so people are just interested to see what your life is like and what you're up to, coffee, beer, whatever it is, and what it is that you're... So they just wrote this song called Moonshine Hill, and in the set, they talk about, we stopped in like we've never had moonshine, so we stopped and went and checked out where this moonshine place was at a store, and so it's all the entire gamut of your life experience, and I think that's really important. People want to know that, they want the curtain lifted. So I think it's really important to talk about stuff that's going on in your life, that's maybe personal. Maybe you want to keep the private stuff private, but people want you to be personable, and they want to feel like they're engaged in your life as well as your music. So I think that's what you need to keep in mind. And then, be generous. Just give stuff away. Just talk about how, if you have 100 fans, talk about the fan that's a super fan, there's this woman in town named Marcy Lively. I don't know if you guys know her, but she comes to every singer-songwriter event, and she's super sweet. And if you have someone like that who's a super fan, who just loves music in general, I think you need to shine the light on people in your community who are helping you have a career. It's that kind of stuff, I think. That's what really matters.
I think you're so spot on about that. You talk about kind of the boring things, the getting the coffee, the driving into the roadside market while you're on tour, things that we do every day. That's really not unlike what you mentioned earlier about playing the same song for the 1,000th time. There are those things in life that we do all the time, and we're like, nobody's going to want to see this. But I'll give you proof that people want to see that. I mentioned these popular YouTubers that are getting 500,000 views per video. And if you go watch those videos, Charles, this is the craziest thing, because they're doing things like cannonballs at the pool. Yep. They're playing with their dogs, playing PlayStation. I'm like, who the hell would watch this? But hey, numbers aren't lying, man. 500,000 people sometimes for each of these. And these guys have gone on to make careers out of YouTube. Who would have ever thought that would happen?
Yeah. And you also have to keep an eye out for the next thing, right? So I don't know if folks out there use something called Vine, and then now Instagram also has video, but what if you could make a really cool music video from all your Vine 6-second Vine segments? I mean, there's just so much you can do. And the pressure is off because, depending on who you are, I guess the pressure is on because you have to tell your story in 140 characters, or you have to do something, in 6 seconds. For some of us, that's really liberating. For other people, it's really pressure-inducing.
Well, I think it can be pressure-inducing, but at the same time, I think if a band can have that element of ambition and pressure, but also balance that with, hey, as I say in the book, I'm playing my game. This is who I am. And you think about the audience, but you also think about who you are, and then you have this kind of non-attachment to it. There's extreme power in there, and I think the guys that we're seeing that are really successful on YouTube, they're taking chances. The guys we're seeing that are successful in music, Kanye West. Have you heard the new Kanye West record?
No,
he took some chances with it, and I was like, who the hell is going to listen to this? Critically acclaimed. He's getting tons of downloads on it. A lot of people love it, and this is the album that he was able to make at this point in his career, because he apparently, from listening to it, is not worried about what people think. And that is engaging. We talked about what's going to get you to watch videos, what's going to get people to watch your videos. There's an element of, I'm this is who I am, and I'm exposed, and I'm not doing this because Charles said at the seminar. No offense, Charles. I mean, you're giving them some tips, but in the end, they have to bring whatever it is that they do. Which you can't just follow the formula. You have to put your stamp on the formula.
Right, and I think there's so many tools out there now, and that every one of those is a potential impression, right? So if YouTube isn't your thing, and I could make a case that it could be your thing if you just found your comfort level. But if you find being in front of a video camera just, it makes you want to curl up and just not do anything, then there's other ways you can do this, right? So there's a guy in Canada who decided that he was going to write actual letters to all his fans. And who does that anymore? But his fan base reacted very strongly to that because he hand wrote letters to all his fans to market and promote his new record. And they were just blown away by that. So you can always find something really low tech or a low tech method to reach the people you want to reach. So
yeah, that's huge. It's a personal connection. It's something
Yep.
I can't tell you how many artists, musicians, even writers that keep like the handwritten feedback notes that they get and they hang on to it. You never know how you're going to impact somebody. And I think that personal touch, email is so easy to erase. It all looks the same. The handwritten letter, even if it's in just like a plain envelope. I mean, who gets mail anymore?
Yeah,
This is always the example I give. It's, Charles, I don't know how old you are, but you're maybe around my age, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, but I'm 40. So when I was growing up, it was so unique for somebody to get a long distance phone call.
Yes.
If you got a long distance phone call, you'd be like, shh, everybody, be quiet. It's long distance. And it was like you'd gather around and who's calling long distance? And these days, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday and she's in Hong Kong right now. Who cares? We don't care. We can call around the world. Letters, it used to be that those things were coming every day. Now that they're not coming in every day, that's kind of like the equivalent of a long distance phone call, right?
It is.
What's old is new again. You're like, wait a minute, somebody sent me a letter. That's weird. Because we're so used to emails, text, we're used to Vine messages or whatever. So that is one way to really stand out. And I'm not sure how much a first class stamp is, but say it's 50 cents now. That's how much it will cost you. That's 50 cents and a few minutes well spent.
Yeah. And, there's a very real danger that standard mail might go away, right? I mean, the U.S. Postal Service is having a tough time keeping it together. So,
yeah. Well, it definitely happened to telegrams.
Yeah, there you go.
So it is certainly possible. Get in there, everybody. Help the mail service.
Yeah.
And use it while you can. But it is definitely it's a way to stand out. And if you have that kind of relationship with your fans where you have their address, we still, a lot of the bands I work with still do direct mail, and it's unbelievable, especially when you couple it with email and with the social media and things, because I think it makes you more real. It's going to be the kind of thing, even if you were just to send out one postcard a month to people letting them know about a gig, it makes you real. Just like a physical CD does. A lot of people really like physical CDs, and it's something they can hold on to, and it's something you can purchase at the live show, and it's something that's going to give you a memory of the live show. And if not physical CDs, like the download cards, and there's some download bracelets, and there's some things that the physical element, I really, really love that. So, Charles, we're kind of deep in here. I want to talk about a couple of the bigger issues. Just that I know that you've been working with. You're working with a band called Lonely Biscuits. And I want to talk about this story because I think that this is a great takeaway. If you're listening right now and you want to know how to build a career, I think some of these things that this act has done are very, very helpful and will help you.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I don't work with them. So I had actually heard about them from an intern who was working with us. And Ainsley, our intern, was going to Belmont at the time. And I was teaching it at Belmont, helping to teach a digital marketing course.
Okay, so Belmont, if you're listening, you don't know, it's Belmont University, belmont.edu. Probably, I would say it's one of the top 3 music business schools in the country, if not the top one.
Yeah, I would totally agree. So they're kind of like, their music program is on par, or maybe even better than Berkeley in Boston. So, but a lot of music business kids and a lot of music business students go there. And so I was teaching a workshop, not a workshop, but it was actually a half semester class. And so one of the things I wanted to do in the class was to bring in, someone from their peer group who could come and talk to the students so, that they could say, oh, this is what we've been doing. And it would seem a bit more tangible and real to the student body than for me to go talk about, say, the Rolling Stones or some of the big country act or something. So I had this intern, and she told me about this band called the Lonely Biscuits. And it turns out one of the guys in the class was a good friend of somebody at the Lonely Biscuits. And so I go hunting for this band called the Lonely Biscuits. and our intern sends us this video, and it's an amazing video. And this one video, I mean, I think the cumulative number of views on YouTube at that point was about 500,000. And the band hadn't been together for very long, just a few months, and they were sophomores at Belmont University. And so we brought the band into the class, and they talked about how they built this thing. So it's 4 guys, right? And they're sophomores, and they're all from different parts of the country. And so one of the guys is from Nebraska, and his friend in Nebraska is a filmmaker or a video guy. And he would fly into Nashville on his own dime and shoot these music videos for the band. And so right off the bat, they just had the cost of materials to just make music videos. So they would make this music videos. And then another guy in the band, knew this guy who was going to school in Los Angeles or California or something, who was a graphic designer or something like that, and he helped them, design merch. Okay? So then one other guy in the band knows this 2 guys out in the East Coast somewhere who have a blog. And so when they put the music video together and they have this whole thing going and they have a few recordings, they send it out to the blog guy on the East Coast. So they've got this whole community thing happening, and pretty soon these guys have got impressions online. So, and their number one goal, besides making music, was to go play shows at other colleges. You remember how when you were growing up as a musician, and when you wanted to make it in the music business, you were thinking about dropping out of college? I think your business plan now has to involve going to college. Because I think it's a built-in fan base if you're good at what you do.
Yeah,
so these guys are going to go play fraternity parties and all this stuff, and they're just gaining this amazing following because not only are they becoming pretty well-known at Belmont, they win the equivalent of the Belmont Grammys. The students at Belmont start telling their other friends at the other colleges about this great band, and then this band gets to go play those other colleges. And so this year, they entered the MTVU award show, and they had enough impressions and enough of a fan base. Oh, by the way, they give away most of their music, right? So they're not worried about that. They want people to come to the shows or to hire them to go play shows. And so they enter the MTVU Awards, and they win the whole thing. So they were at South by Southwest, one of the biggest stories at South by Southwest. They just got signed to Red Light Management, and they're not even sure if they want a record deal because they've got everything going on their own.
Yeah.
So it's just incredibly impressive. So
and the whole time frame of that, do you know how long that was?
So South by was in March. When I had them come to the class, it was January, I think.
Okay.
And they already had 500,000 impressions. So I think they were together probably for about 8 months before that, maybe less than that. So, it was fairly quick.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen for everybody that way, but it can happen that quick if you've got maybe a little luck on your side, if you believe in that, but
sure.
All your ducks in a row.
Yeah, but I think the bigger story here is that they understood what they could do well, and they got people in their immediate circle to sort of jump in and help, and who knew what they were doing. And they talked about how they had other people want to jump in and help who didn't know what they were doing, and then they kind of just moved on from there.
Right.
And so, but they got quality help, and now the guy, who was flying international on his own dime, they now fly him in, pay him something to do the videos, but the look is a very consistent look, and the concepts are amazing. And I'll have to go back and look at their videos, but I don't think they did one cover song. It's all just this really cool kind of stuff. They were calling it, what were they calling it? Surf rap. And, they're sort of like rapping in the middle of the song, but it's very melodic, guitar-oriented stuff. And John and Grady, who are the lead singers, are really great singers. And, I think this is how you do it. You don't worry about how many units you're going to sell. You worry about how you can tell your story in such a way, or share what's going on in your life, or how do you enable and empower the community of fans around you to tell your story, then it becomes even more powerful.
I think when you do all those things, the success, the sales, the people at your shows, it emerges, if that makes sense.
It's more organic that way.
If you do this, then that will happen.
Right.
And I'm completely with you. I think it goes back to what we were talking about, like the passion and having that passion and that story on these videos and your blog posts and your tweets and just kind of like acting like you're going somewhere and be going somewhere.
Yeah.
Because so many people, Seth Godin would say tribes, if you've read that book. People are waiting for you to lead them. And that's true, I would say. Most people, they kind of just, the river is flowing and they just jump in and take whatever way the river wants them to go. And if you've got something kind of cool, they'll swim over to you and jump on your track.
Yeah, I mean, take the Civil Wars, I mean, when the Civil Wars first started here in Nashville, they were playing I think they played a show at the French Quarter. And I think, and both Joy and JP came from different situations. And I think by their own admission, they would say it wasn't incredibly successful. But then when they got together and happened to write and all that, and then this thing started happening, their first recording from Eddie's Attic, they just gave away for free, and not even for an email address. They just put it up on their website, and they just gave it away, right? And then now, they're not even together anymore, and they can sell an album, So
the momentum is such that, that'll happen.
Right, and Columbia is distributing the record for some, I'm sure it's a really lucrative deal. So there you go. So your conversion now is so astronomical that what you did at the very beginning, whatever you invested or whatever you gave away or whatever you sort of use as a loss leader is incredibly justified, right? So,
well, certainly I believe in that. My new book, Six Figure Musician, I'm giving it away because I wouldn't ask bands to do what I'm not willing to do.
Right.
But with that said, there are services that bands can pay for. One of them is working with you, Charles, and I want to give you a plug. You've given some great information here. So it's OutsideTheBoxMusic.com is the website. But how can people work with you? What do they have to have in order before you'll talk to them? Because I know a lot of people want to work with you, and you don't consider everybody.
Yeah, and it's not that we're snobs about it or anything. We just want to be able to do a good job for you. Because, I mean, I'm a musician, a songwriter, and an artist myself, and the last thing I want is for someone to walk into a situation with us who's got money to spend or whatever, but who doesn't necessarily, who's not going to regain that investment in some form. So, I think sometimes people think, oh, the digital stuff, all we have to do is just put a video up on YouTube and have a song out on iTunes, and suddenly everything's just going to blow up and go viral. But the truth of the matter is, what we do in the digital space is only going to help if you're doing stuff on the ground outside of digital. So if you're playing shows, if you're writing songs, if you're building a community on the ground, that's how we can best help you. So for us, I think one of the things that really, really helps us, that we get excited about, is when we go to a show and we just see this band killing it, or this artist killing it, or the songwriter just tearing my heart out, because that song makes me just want to curl up on the floor and cry myself to sleep that night, because it's just that amazing. And everybody else in the room feels the same way. And so it becomes a meaningful relationship when we go, okay, so this is working here in this room at the Bluebird, or at the basement, or whatever it is. And then if it's working here, then we can do stuff to make it work all over the net. And this is how we can put a campaign together, or this is what it's going to take, and this is the kinds of resources we're going to need, and that kind of stuff. Because and a lot of the time, bands, we end up sort of rebuilding their websites or whatever because they're not optimized for what they're trying to do. Because I think sometimes you get so focused on this one amazing opportunity, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to open for, name your favorite rock star, and you just kind of freak out and you don't have anything in place to sort of leverage that exposure. And what you really want to think about, though, is how do you take that exposure and get the next exposure,
right,
or get the next impression. So, it's a process. It's Legos. You build stuff on top of another.
You do have to have the foundation. I love that. I think that's a huge takeaway here. Right before you and I started this conversation, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's working with a lot of acts that are coming through The Voice, that whole system, and it's amazing the guys that get on a national TV show. It's huge.
Yep.
And they're not prepared for it. They can sing, but they don't do anything to leverage all that exposure. And when they lose or whatever happens on The Voice, you walk away from it.
Yep, we've seen that.
They're right back where they were.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way. So I think that what you're doing is really fantastic. It's no matter what opportunity comes, you are there to help them basically maximize the advantage.
That's right. Because, I think ultimately what you want to do, I forget who used this analogy, is create a bunch of buckets all across the internet that are catching all these drips of fans or attention or impressions, and then taking all those drips and making it move in a coherent fashion and making that into one synergistic ball of energy for you to get catapulted to the next level. I think that's what you need to look at. And, and honestly, a lot of the stuff that you would need at a starting level, you don't need to hire an agency like us. You can do a lot of stuff on your own to begin. But I do think at some point, it might become something where you want to bring in a team. And that's when it makes sense for us to be involved.
And for those guys that are not ready to bring you on as, let's say, hire your company for that, you also have workshops. You were talking about like doing Belmont, and I know you've got some other things that you've done around town and just elsewhere. So there's kind of that middle option. If somebody's interested in doing it themselves, you can kind of get them up to speed on where it is they need to go to make that happen.
Yeah, so I have a background in academia, and so education is really, really important to me. And so one of the things we have is this effort called Rock the Net, and OutsideTheBoxMusic.com would have more information on that, and we're about to launch a site called iRockTheNet.com here in about a month or so. But essentially what we do is we teach you how to do our job. So, we teach these workshops, and artists and team members come and learn how to use different sort of tools, like how do you use Bandcamp, or how do you use Topspin, or how do you use, any of the amazing number of tools that are out there now that artists and different people online can use to kind of get the word out about what they do. It's, again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's more than just about the like. It's more than just about the tweet. The question is, how do you use those tools to build community, and how do you empower your fan base to then take whatever you're putting up on those platforms and tell your story to other people, because that's when it becomes real.
Yeah, when you've got 100 or even 50 or 10 fans doing that kind of work, it's better than you talking about yourself, because that's always better to have somebody else say good things about us than us. But you can have 10, 50, or 100 times the leverage that you would have on your own. So I think that's fantastic. Charles, I appreciate you being here on the musicmarketing.com podcast, and you're on Twitter. Is that the best way for somebody to kind of reach out and ask you a quick question?
Yeah, so you can, so on Twitter, I'm Music Charles, so we're on there on Twitter. And then on Facebook, you can just reach me at Rock the Net on Facebook. And then I'll just give you my email address. Just, you can email me at charles@outsidetheboxmusic.com.
And you take postcards. You say you like those in
love
mail,
letters and
personal
postcards.
mail.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We'll leave that for another show. I don't want to. Who knows? So reach out to Charles that way through Twitter, Facebook, or good old email.
Yep, absolutely.
Charles, thanks for being here. We're going to have you back because you're like my guy when I need to know about like the latest and greatest hipster digital stuff.
Yeah, the Hipster Digital podcast.
Well, we talk about that. You talk about like just like outsourcing it though, and having your other people like basically your team, the people that can fill things out for you. I mean, this is your job. You're doing it 24/7. And, I'm doing other things that just keep me, not as in touch, and musicians are playing music. So we all need a guy like you that's keeping tabs on this stuff. So if you're interested in digital music marketing, digital strategist, Charles Alexander is the man to check out. He's at OutsideTheBoxMusic.com. Charles, thanks again for being here, and we'll have you soon on the MusicMarketing.com podcast.
Well, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your fan base. So.
Thanks for listening to the MusicMarketing.com podcast. If you have any questions or comments, email David and Wendy at musicmarketingpodcast@gmail.com. To listen to past shows and get even more music marketing advice, visit musicmarketing.com.